It was almost every night, and I asked him to use only the tip, since the volume and texture of the instrument were significant. While my mother rested in the other room, it served as the setting for an unexpected spectacle. As time went by, this became more frequent, as if an automaton awaiting orders from its inventor. My hands knew that the only destination after 11 p.m. was to hold firmly to the headboard, murmuring in a low tone that was instantly interrupted by the pillow. There is no mystery. I never imagined that I would experience what I have lived in my life. It seems that every movement was planned, as if there was a scheme for me to change my concepts. Some parts of this story need to be hidden, in order to protect this work written by me. People usually call me Emma. I am 22 years old and I live in a small rural town called Sunnyvale, located in the interior of the United States. I grew up in this environment of dust, dirt roads, and time that flows slowly. My mother, Mrs. Mary, is a strong woman, but recently she has been feeling very discouraged about her choice of profession and the legacy she is leaving behind. She is a successful nurse, after all. In addition to earning money at the hospital, she also takes care of a wealthy elderly man who pays her very well on his days off. The man, named Richard, was a friend who lived with her, who came from far away to spend time with us after Mary separated from my father, John. Mrs. Mary did not get along with my father, because he did not like her having the job she loves today. Maybe it was because there came a time when my mother earned more than him, and this created many hidden conflicts that you will understand later. And after he left, she began to seek more company so that she would not be alone. That was when, in one of her great friendships, she remembered Richard, and he simply left everything in his city to live here in the countryside with Mary. I was taking a business course in a region close to our city. I took the bus and only studied at night, since I had been able to get this course through a scholarship. Donor Mary didn't even care about me working. Her income of approximately $9,000 kept us well off in our little house. Richard was starting to get new patients, and everything was working out the way it was supposed to. His affectionate way of taking care of the house, of me and Donor Mary, made me feel good about having him with us. But I had no idea that things would take a different turn. One morning, I had gone to the backyard to get firewood to light the wood stove, since Mom had left for another exhausting shift at the hospital. When I came back, I came across Richard organizing some books on the living room table. He had a concentrated posture, half bent over a notebook where he was taking notes. With the sunlight streaming through the window and illuminating his face, I noticed for the first time how calm he seemed, but at the same time there was something intense in his gaze. "Oh, Emma. Good morning. Mary left some documents here about the patient she sees. I'm taking a look because she asked me for some opinions," he said with a smile that made me feel awkward. For a moment, I didn't quite understand if he had come just to support my mother or because he was so involved in her affairs. But with each sentence that came out of his mouth, I felt a curiosity pulsing inside me, the desire to understand better who he was. I tried not to show how much that intrigued me. "Good morning, Richard. Everything okay?" "So, Mom has been working so hard," I said as I left the firewood in the corner of the kitchen. He nodded, letting out a sigh. "Mary seems tired, but she says she loves her job, you know? She's a dedicated nurse. And when she's not at the hospital, she's taking care of this man who pays well but demands so much." We said goodbye there, each of us taking care of something, but I had the feeling that I wanted more time to talk and find out what was behind the calmness of this man who left everything to live here. It was on a random Wednesday that a detail caught my attention. He was wearing a well-ironed white shirt, sitting on the wooden porch, looking at the dirt road in silence, as if he were reflecting on life. I decided to approach him and start a conversation. "Why did you come here, Richard? My mother always says it was for friendship, but I feel like there's something more." He laughed softly, without taking his eyes off the horizon. In the following weeks, I noticed that our conversations became more intimate, albeit subtly. I told him about my dreams, how I wanted to maybe open a small business in the city or maybe travel out of state. He encouraged me, saying that each choice in life is a step towards discovering who we are. And every now and then, we exchanged long glances, the kind that seem to create a magnetic field that holds us and prevents us from looking away. Mom, busy as always, rarely showed up, and I, without wanting to, started to get used to his presence. It was almost a ritual. Richard would come over, ask how I was doing, look at my study material, sometimes even explain a psychological concept that could help me stay motivated. And every day, I noticed something new about him. The way he held his coffee cup, the delicate frankness when he complimented me on something. One night, I couldn't resist my curiosity and asked, "Do you really like my mom that much, or is it just a friendly affection?" He took a while to answer, his expression serious but not hard. "Your mom helped me when I needed it, and I want to reciprocate." But he paused. "Lately, I realize that most of his dedication is to you. I like being around you, Emma. It has surprised me, I confess." The confession caught me off guard. Despite my suspicions, hearing that made me blush and be speechless. The air felt warmer, the breeze stopped, and all I could hear was my heart pounding. I tried to hide the happiness that was bubbling inside me, but I probably failed, because he smiled too, perhaps relieved to see my reaction. I still don't know how my mother would react if she knew about the atmosphere that was forming between me and Richard. But it was on a Saturday night that my mother had to meet that rich old man mentioned at the beginning of the story. As soon as she left the house, I asked Richard if he would like to watch a movie together so we could pass the time and exchange ideas about college and life. In some parts of the film we chose, I noticed that he was getting more animated in the corner, and I observed his every gesture. He, always respectful and affectionate with us, never gave me a reason to question him. It was then that I made a gesture with my hands in my hair, tossing it to the side, that he realized, in his psychological concepts, that I was enjoying being there. It was at that moment that something different happened. He stood up and noticed that I was a little tense. With a light touch on my shoulders, I began to feel lighter. That small friction in my movements was putting me in a state of deep joy. It wasn't 5 minutes before I nodded to him, and with light steps, we walked to the little used room in the house so that we could talk more about life. When I got there, I was about to unlock a thin line. The existing tissues that covered the understood curves of the anatomy were at floor level, and I couldn't resist seeing a repair tool about to work on a simple fitting solution. Little did I know that, after the first door opened, I myself would open a unique moment that would mark my life on the following days. Every day, at the same time, a good movie and a surprising ending. After living that for almost 2 months without Mary even noticing, I made a decision and asked Richard if he agreed. "I think it's time for us to leave, Richard, and formalize a new life. Do you agree?" I looked at him, saying with a firm gaze, "Look, I would like that too, but how am I going to do it? What will become of the construction I created with Mrs. Mary?" He looked at me with a doubtful look. "Do you really think we could live like this every day? Think about it, Richard." He thought for about 2 days after that conversation and wrote a note to Mrs. Mary. I would be dropping out of college to live a life abroad, because I didn't know how Mrs. Mary would react. I thought a lot. I thought about stopping, about changing my attitudes, but I needed to be happy. It was an early Friday. She had just left, and I started packing my bags. Richard, with a heavy heart, felt that it was time to go too. We took the bus with only our bags and an amount of approximately $20,000 that Richard had saved during his time in that house. Donna Mary would be fine. She earns a good living. Maybe one day she will remember the time she jumped the fence without my father, John, knowing that she was there. Emma's story tells of a certain indignation at her father's departure. She, in someone else's case, has a new story about leaving, and tells a different story from the others. I still believe that Richard had been talking to donor Mary for a long time. She just didn't say it in the story, but it makes perfect sense that it is. Did you like this story? So, leave a comment telling us what you thought, and, if you've experienced something similar, share it with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any new content. Here, we always bring life stories, reflections, and real experiences, all with great sincerity. Thank you for watching until the end and for being part of this journey. See you in the next video.